this energy, this vibrational energy can stimulate the body. It can stimulate the body's own ability to heal, to detox, directly affect your gut. I mean, it improves physical and mental health, but it addresses that spiritual side. And those are things that are, I think, really missing with people. And so when they hear that it's not just nutrition, that we can address this energy, it's like a whole new world opening up for people. It's so beautiful to witness.
Welcome to the Cosmic Love Antenna Podcast. This podcast is meant to encourage you to connect within so you can share your light with the world. And now, here's your host, Harrison Meagher.
Welcome, beautiful souls, to another episode of your Cosmic Love Antenna. I am your host, Harrison, here as always with another beautiful, powerful, inspiring, informative guest to share with you, to have a deep dive chat today into all things gut health. I'm excited. We've done a couple episodes with guests coming on. We've talked about the gut here and there, but today I really want this to make a sort of masterclass around the whole gut topic. And my beautiful friend, Jennifer Dowdican, is a specialist in many ways. She's a beautiful being that you'll hear today. But Jen is a holistic nutritionist. She's a Reiki master. She's a gut expert, and she's many, many things. She's also a very powerful, loving light in the world. And as is the theme here on the Cosmic Love Antenna, my goal is to not only share beautiful advice, beautiful insights, but to share the love of others with you. So with that, Jen, welcome to the Cosmic Love Antenna.
Thank you. That was by far the most amazing introduction I've ever had.
I'll follow you around, and I can just have that as your intro for wherever you go.
Or I can record it and just. But anyway, thank you. Honored to be here, my friend.
How's your gut feeling right now as we get into this chat? I was just sharing with you that I'm about to have some food after this, so my gut's feeling excited. How's your gut feeling now we're in the world?
Oh, mine's feeling pretty balanced. Yeah. So I had a late smoothie, so I'm good there.
a nice little small, easily digestible meal to head into your nighttime, head into your sleep. All right, Jen, I want to get into this conversation because there's so many things I want to ask you, so many things I want to deep dive into for the people listening. Where I want to start is where I start with all guests that I bring on, is a little bit about you. And specifically, I want to know about give me a brief synopsis, background into why you got into this kind of work, specifically with the gut itself. Tell me the origin story that made you the beautiful being that you are in front of me right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, we'll briefly skip back to when I was a child and had chronic digestive issues, chronic stomach aches. And I'm a child of the 70s. So back then we didn't know about things like dairy and gluten. We didn't have the gluten fat. So all of these things were major disruptors for me. But I also experienced anxiety as a child. One of the things that impacted that was a disconnect in the relationship with one of my parents, and that overbearing control, and then that lack of self-love and self-worth. And so, we carry that into our adolescence and our adulthood. And without understanding that it has such an impact on our gut. But for me as a child, I was chronically ill. And as I got older, I experienced things like Epstein-Barr and autoimmune. And it wasn't until probably my late 20s that I really started to do that deep search into what is happening to me and what is happening with me. And I really...
Jen, let me jump in here. So, and I'm just going to do this, Jen. I'm going to jump in between your beautiful expressions, because how I usually do these chats is you'll be saying there'll be something moving through you, and I'm here listening like, oh, I want to break that down just so that people listening can understand a little bit more. I think your story, and this is what I wanted to get at, and I'm happy you're going straight there with the autoimmune, the Epstein-Barr, and the emotional elements of the gut and the physiological stresses. You're not alone. Your story, and I'm sure you've experienced this in the work that you've done, it's almost like a cliche now, right? It's almost like a cliche of these patterns that are sort of threading through. I look at Jen, do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 51.
Yeah. So my mum is around the same age. And I look at what, the similar sort of the trends of, and we'll probably get into this, but not just the gluten, not just the dairy, but the margarines, the vegetable oils that were so big, the bastardization of healthy fats for the refined vegetable oils and the refined sugars. So I guess I want to ask a question here, Jen, just to interject into your beautiful story. In your work with the gut, do you see similarities in your story with the people that come to see you?
150%. Yeah. 150%.
What do you think are the main drivers for that, other than the points that I just hit on? For you, what do you think? Why is it so systemic?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm not going to go right to nutrition. I'm going to go to trauma and the emotions that we store in our organs at a cellular level. And this is the piece of the puzzle that so many are unaware of. Mm-hmm. I mean, I shared with a client today who broke down in tears, and then I broke down in tears because he was like, nobody ever talked to me about this. Mm-hmm. And there's so much of this puzzle that we have to address and heal really for optimal wellness, which then in return, we can reverse illness, et cetera, or prevent a major health event, which I experienced a major health event because of that very reason of not addressing the energy, the trauma, and the emotional side of things. I'm the poster child for that.
You're tickling my fancy, Jen, and you know this because we're friends and we talk about these things in spaces we hold together. But if you're listening as a listener in the podcast world, I promise I'm not paying Jen here to say the things that I love to talk about, but it's just because it's true, right? And I think we'll get into it. I do want to speak a little bit about the food elements because I know that's a big part, but we will get to the energetics because I know, much like myself, you do a lot of Reiki, and Reiki has such a powerful role for that emotional release around the gut center, right? So yes. I want to plant the seed here as we take this chat forward with people. Just keep coming back to this trauma, emotional element within the gut itself, because it is in my opinion, much like Jen's, it is a fundamental root cause for it. But Jen, let's backtrack a little bit. So I interrupted you to pull that piece out, and you were telling me about your journey. I'm wondering, for you and your healing, your personal healing, what was the final straw? So you had it sounds like you said autoimmune, you had the Epstein-Barr, you had these other elements going on. What was the final, I call it the pain teacher. What was the final straw that broke the camel's back that allowed you to really open yourself up to healing and then sort of step into this world as a practitioner?
Well, I will tell you the first final straw, and you'll understand why. I would say about 12, 13 years ago, my son was battling addiction. And so, you can only imagine as a parent, the worry. And I literally made myself sick over it. Like adrenals were depleted, autoimmune flare, anxiety, panic attacks, the whole gamut. And it was that rock bottom that we talk about. And it's in that vulnerable state that you hopefully surrender, and surrender meaning being open to the support, the help, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to understand that you deserve to feel good, to live joy, and to experience love, etc. And I had never gotten there. And so this was exactly what you said, but obviously a gift, right? And so that's where it all began for me. It was that Some call it that spiritual awakening. And that's exactly what it was for me. And so it was that point that I really dove into getting the support that I needed for myself and understanding that I had no control over my son's journey. And that's really where major healing happened for me. And that was in my early 40s.
And at that point, had you been training as a nutritionist? Like, what was this? Was it ramping up at this point, or and then at this point you then decided to go deeper? Well, how did that look?
Yeah. So at that point, or probably prior to that, is when I dove into the health coaching program at Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And I was weaning myself out of dentistry because I was a dental hygienist for many, many years. And so that's where I dove deep. But it wasn't until I had breast cancer sometime after that I really understood the trauma side of things.
Yes.
So I had really nailed down the nutritional side of things, right? Yeah. But it was the breast cancer that really was the tipping point for addressing the trauma side of things.
So that was the big pain teacher. It sounds like the breast.
That was the big pain teacher.
So let me ask you, how old were you when you were diagnosed with the breast cancer?
Oh, the breast cancer was 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and at that time with the breast cancer, was there also still some gut challenges going on?
Yes.
Yeah. And what were you diagnosed? Was there a leaky gut? Was there irritable bowel? Was there SIBO? What was the gut specific challenge?
Actually, for me, it was leaky gut. It was, with some functional testing, addressing those imbalances in those, that the keystone species, as we call it. But yeah, and that was really an eye opener for me, and that's what's interesting, and surprising to some people, that even as practitioners with all this knowledge, we have these experiences, and it's really a part of the journey to dive deeper. So
it is, Jen. And so this is what I want to add to this. And this is why I was asking these questions. So I want to dive into the emotional stuff that you talked about with the breast cancer, because I think that can be very relevant to what we're talking about here. But I want to go back. I want people to realize, because we're talking about it now, and I'm just going to go deep because I can't help myself. With the gut, if we're having a physiological challenge, so let's say it's the leaky gut, and we're also noticing at the same time we're going through a sort of dark night of the soul, a spiritual awakening, as you put it, where we're starting to realize, what do I really want to be doing right now? What do I need to understand? What do I need to heal? How do I want to show up in the world? That is not a coincidence. Energetically, what is the solar plexus, which is a big part of the gut? We could talk about the sacral, and we'll probably get to that, but let's just stick with the solar plexus. The solar plexus connects to our personal power and what allows us to be the beautiful being that we are. So if we're having a physiological imbalance, in your case with leaky gut, then there is going to be a test of that. So when we move through the healing of it, of course, there's going to be a shaking up of what we identify as a being, right? Whether it be through our vocation, whether it be our relationship with healing, whether it be through who we think we are. So I want to, first of all, Jen, does that resonate with what I'm saying?
Beautifully spoken. Yeah. Beautifully said. Yeah, absolutely.
And this is where now I want to flow into the breast cancer element. The gut is the center of health in many ways, right? Yes. And we could talk about it from a physical perspective, and we will. I want to still hit on those elements in this chat, but let's continue the trauma and the emotional side of things at this moment. And let's now connect. I'm wondering, I want to get your perspective on this, Jen, but if something is happening in the center of our being, and for whatever reason, we don't address it. We don't listen to the communication. We don't see the symptoms. We continue with our lives. The center moves outwards. The center moves up and out energetically. And this is just one example. energetically, we know that our chakra system, there is a flow of energy and information upwards. What is the energy center that comes after the solar plexus? Everyone can answer, but Jen, it's the heart. It's the heart, right?
Absolutely.
So I want to pass to you now, Jen. I'm wondering, one, if this resonates, but two, where do you think, as someone that does this kind of work as well, where do you think the heart, the breast cancer came in, especially connected to your gut healing journey? And we can take it energetically and emotionally, right? Just so put that foundation in there.
Okay. Well, I mean, energetically and emotionally, it would absolutely deal with that center, that power center. But when we look at manifesting, and I like to say manifesting, but we look at manifesting, we manifest the good and the not so good. Mm-hmm. And when we manifest illness like that, like breast cancer or whatever, we look at that element of grief. For me, grief, obviously the personal power that we talked about. But for me personally, it really still came down to the self-worth element and really embracing my authentic self, really that deeper connection with my higher self, because I think to a certain degree that was lacking. So I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. It makes perfect sense, Jen. And again, I promise listeners, we're going to come back to the physical stuff, but we're on this train now, and I hope this is giving value. So what is also in the heart? The heart is also energetically the home of the soul, the home of our spirit. So when you say connected to your higher self, that is the progression from the solar plexus. I would actually count the solar plexus as the ego. That is where the ego is formed, the small identity of what we are. But then as it progresses up to the heart space, that heart is the seat of the soul, right? So now the ego identification and the higher self intuition, spiritual are meeting. And if there is friction here that we are unable to move through for whatever reason, you can see how a manifestation of that might come through the physical body. So let's tie this up, Jen. I'm interested. What happened with the breast cancer? You're obviously the beautiful person I'm looking at right now. How did you move through this? What was the lesson? What did you learn?
Well, first of all, Louise Hay would be so proud of you right now. So, interestingly enough, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, the moment that I found out, of course, it was slightly an out-of-body experience. But then there was this sense of everything's going to be okay. This is a message. This is a message. And what is the message? And so at that point, I chose to go through some conventional treatment. Then I chose to stop and then continue with holistic treatment because I knew it was gone. And I knew from this point on, it was about diving so much deeper, not into just nutrition, but into the energy work. And so that's what I did. And that's when I was guided to my energy mentor, my energy coach, who's from India. And we really dove deep into the trauma work. I've had some really profound experiences and guidance from, we'll just say the beyond, because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And it was so beautiful. And yet it was obviously scary to a certain degree and painful, but it was a beautiful experience. And I can honestly say that. And, when you hear people say, yeah, that happened to me, but it happened for me and I wouldn't change a thing. Well, I wouldn't change a thing. And it really took me to a place of letting go of that residual resentment that I was still harboring towards a parent who I love dearly and we're close, but it's like all those little things that you hold on to for so long. And then you realize they're not harming anyone else but myself. And that's the message. And that's the message that I just am so passionate about relaying to people, because including my conversation today, where the response was, I just never was told this. I never understood this. And it's like, okay, all right, well, let's begin, So let's do it. Let's roll. That's the message. And, I look back and I'm like, wow. And I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful.
It's beautiful, my friend. And I'm happy. Thank you for sharing that journey. And I can feel the energy coming off this teacher that you had, this lesson, and I agree. We not only live in a universe where everything is happening for a reason, we live in a universe where everything is happening for us, including these pain teachers that come in to grace us with new expansion. Can I ask a question? And it's I have a hunch, and I have a hunch it's connected to the gut stuff. With the parent that you said, who was the parent and what was the thing you were holding on to?
The parent is my mom.
Yep.
And holding on to like I said, the resentment toward
Was it anger by any chance?
Oh, anger. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Because there is still the dynamic on that side, even all these years. And so as a sensitive being, a highly sensitive being, and the seed in the family that really is the one who has dove deep into these practices, unlike anyone else.
Yes.
So it's sometimes it's wavy.
Yes.
And rocky.
Well, Jen, so let me jump in here. So what I wanted to get at with that, and thank you for sharing. The reason I was asking about the anger and the emotion and the parent is, so we jumped up to the heart. I want to go back down to the gut now. But so the grief and the resentment is in that heart space, but the anger, which often underlies a big part of it, is in that gut space. And I want to come back now to the gut, and I want to talk about the leaky gut, because that is something that you move through yourself, and I'm sure it's something that you help people with in this moment, right?
Sure.
One of the biggest components that break down a leaky gut. So if you're listening to this, you want to learn how to improve and move through leaky gut. What we need to realize is one of the things that breaks down the tight junctions that open in a leaky gut diagnosis that cause challenges. One of the biggest constituents and components that add to that is stress, and not just food stress, which we'll probably get into a little bit, but energetic and emotional stress. And anger, if we are holding on to anger, remember, anger is like any beautiful emotion. It deserves to be expressed and channeled. If we hold on to it, either if we've been given to it from a parent or it's been triggered by a parent and we're holding it in, that is causing stress. That is causing emotional, energetic stress, which is at the very least compounding the leaky gut challenge, if not the root cause of it. Thoughts, Jen? How does this resonate at all?
100%. Absolutely. Yes, because, and we'll touch on it at some point again, I'm sure, but anger is one of those emotions that keeps us in that sympathetic. And it's that, that anxious state that we always say the fight or flight, but it's that stress state. And that immediately affects our gut. It immediately shuts down digestion. It immediately affects the production of those beautiful neurotransmitters that keep us, feeling this state of peace and joy and whatever. So it does so much more, we know, but anger is, I agree with you 100%.
It's a big one. It's a big killer on that gut lining. It's a very big one. So let's go down this path, Jen. I want to now throw it to you to break down. So when someone comes to see you and they have this diagnosis, either from a practitioner or self-diagnosed leaky gut, which, just to be very straight with people, I think most of us have a leaky gut just due to the industrial age. Two big components, in my opinion: the industrial ages that we live in and all of the extra stresses that are constantly bombarding us from all different angles, and also the inability to be the emotional, energetic beings that we are. So there's a lot of suppression of those things. So exacerbating this gut. I'm interested, Jen, what do you see as the big sort of gut lining, gut dysbiosis challenges that people come to you with? What are the killers that you'd most often see?
Well, we mentioned the stress, the emotion, the environmental toxins. Of course, we talk about gluten and conventional dairy, alcohol, medications. Medications are huge. Processed sugar, processed food. Every single one of those just impacts us in such a negative way. And like I said, and then people don't realize some of these elements, they think it's just the food they're eating. So, but yeah, I would say those are primarily the key factors.
And I understand when someone comes to see you, I'm just imagining it, right? That it's definitely not a quick fix with something like a leaky gut. There is a process and a protocol to it. And there's a stage and a sort of implementation of different stages. Like, for example, in the coaching that I do, I generally start with the emotional and spiritual stuff first. And then I, once we get through that, the cosmic love antenna, which is the name of this podcast, it's also the name of the coaching that I do. The idea is to get the frequency flowing of the antenna system first. That's the emotions, that's the spiritual connection, and then support the antenna with the structure of it, which is the food, the movement, the recovery. I'm wondering specifically with a leaky gut challenge, how do you stage it, Jen? Is it get to the root cause of the trauma with the inner child and then work on cutting out dairy? Or is it, making sure that we're avoiding refined sugars and then we get into the Reiki and start empowering the solar plexus? What is it? What's the sort of brief expression of that?
Yeah, sure. So I would say more times than not, when I am connected with a potential client, it's really their awareness is mostly around the food. And so they think by altering the food, it's going to just, boom, we're there. It's a very slow, gradual process. And what I do is I kind of implement some nutritional changes and repair processes, but I also address everything from lifestyle to, as far as, we'll talk about the vagus nerve. We implement some practices that they can use daily or a few times a week when it comes to reducing that stress in their life, opening up more about those traumas and the inner child and all that, because that's not my specific area of focus, but it has to be talked about. So even if it's not something that I work directly with them on, we're going to recommend that they do that or pursue that. So, it's at least bringing that awareness. So when we look at just strictly addressing the leaky gut from a nutritional standpoint, we're talking about repairing that gut lining. So for me, it's not about having somebody eliminate 20 things, okay? Because then in that process, you're depriving your body of key nutrients that we need for the repair. So it really comes down to eliminating a few things, but really flooding the body with beautiful, nourishing, high vibrational things, along with some minor supplementation that can start repairing the gut lining, like a product called Meagher mucosa and L-glutamine and some of these things, before we get into even addressing probiotics and all these other things, because that's where the misconception is, that people assume that, okay, if you put me on 20 supplements, I'm going to feel better. But, let's not go there, because those are meant to assist, but not cure. And if a client is open and available to do a stool test or some functional testing, then we can try to arrange for that as well, because sometimes it's easier in the beginning to have that stool test and really see what we're missing out on, check for, bacterial overgrowth or specifics that we can immediately address.
Yeah.
But if not, it's really just low and slow and loving and taking it one step at a time. One of the things I implement with clients is a smoothie, because, and I know that sounds so cheesy, but it's an opportunity for having something that's easy on digestion, but we can incorporate these gut lining healing things. So it's like, and I have them come back and say, I love my smoothie. I look forward to it every day. So it's really about not using that 4-letter word diet, which I freaking hate. And it's like, it's taken a lifetime to get to where we are. Let's talk about just taking a step back and breathing through this and not make it overwhelming. My client today said, I was so overwhelmed before talking to you, and now I just feel hope. And it just like made me want to cry, because
everyone can access that. That's not a one person. Yes. So let me add a few things here, Jen. So thank you for that breakdown. And it's a beautiful description. And the first thing I'll say is that one step at a time mantra really needs to be honed in on. And this applies to all health beyond the gut. We can feel so overwhelmed. We can feel so overwhelmed by all the things. And it's because we see health as a destination. We need to go back to what you talked about with your pain teacher and the breast cancer. I actually believe that health is a mindset. And if we see that same mindset that you talked about, that everything is happening for me, not to me, you can actually be healthy in a state of disease. You can be healthy in a state of challenge. You can be healthy in a state of imbalance, as long as you are taking one step at a time and you see the pain, you see the challenges, you see the difficulties as a way for you to get to your goals and dream. If you are doing that, you are healthy. Right. Yes. And it's not a unrealistic space that you'll get to. I'll be happy when, I'll be healthy when. It's a now in the moment present thing. The other thing, and I want to throw this at you, and this is what I do, and I want to validate it because you are the specialist here and you do this work. I tend to, when it comes to the gut, it's something that I address, but it's not something that I focus on. I at this moment in my practitioner journey, I'm spending much more time in the sort of deeper spiritual woo-woo world, but it is an important element.
I love it.
So what I do when I get to the gut stage, these are the steps that I take, and I want to check them by you. I totally agree with when you were talking about, there's no point adding in all the supplementation if the gut is still imbalanced. Right now, you're just having expensive pee. Also, the supplementation becomes another symptom-based approach. It becomes, you've replaced the pharmaceuticals with the beautiful holistic organic supplementation, but you're still focusing on the symptoms. You're not getting to the root cause, and that is what we do by healing the gut. So I remove these things, and this is what I want to check with you, Jen. When someone comes to see me, this is where you need to start to get to the root healing of the gut. We want to remove all refined dairy, all refined oils, the canola oils, the vegetable oils that we talked about, the refined sugar, the refined salts, and the refined grains. If we can remove all of those, then the gut finally has a chance to start healing. Then on top of this, and I want to pass back to you here, if at the same time that we're removing all of those, we now add in, if possible, organic produce, so our fruits and veggies, and based off the stage we're at, fermented foods. This now starts to become a 1-2 punch, right? We're healing the gut by removing the things that are causing the challenges, and now adding in whole food forms that are complexes rather than isolates in a supplementation form that are hitting more of a holistic problem. How does that sound, Jen, to you?
It sounds amazing. And here's why, because like you said, if our gut is in a dysbiotic state, as we call it, we're not going to absorb all of these supplements. So yes, we have expensive pee, like you said. I love that. And what we call crowding out. So we're going to crowd out these harmful things with all these beautiful things. And the beautiful thing about plants, and of course, I don't lecture people on animal protein, but what I do is educate them on the beauty of plants because of that, those beautiful microbes that we need in plant diversity to rebuild that wellness military of bacteria in our guts. We have our own, for the listeners, we have that microbiome, which is the environment that houses all the trillions of microbes. And when we have leaky gut and dysbiosis, we are lacking key species that we need to reduce that chronic inflammation and heal disease or prevent disease. So how do we acquire that? And it's through those beautiful plants that you talked about, fruits and veggies and nuts and seeds. And we can go into legumes, but it's all in baby steps, like we talked about in that introduction, because so many people that we come in contact with are having the same things every day and they're not getting that diversity. So when we start to introduce that, we have to really be slow about it and just take our time and then start to see those beautiful positive results. So yes, I totally agree with you. And alcohol. I'll throw in alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol's yeah. Jen, I have a question, and this one has just bubbled up, and I want to use this opportunity because you do so much gut work. I'm interested. You talked about animal products, and I won't go there too much today because it is a whole conversation in itself. But I do want to ask about one thing. I want to ask your opinion on fermented dairy products, and let me put a disclaimer here. And I want to say grass-fed, organic, fermented dairy products. What is your opinion from building a healthy gut microbiome in terms of gut health? Give it to me.
So, just reiterating what you said, if it is from a trusted source, like here in Tennessee, we can go to local organic farms that have the grass-fed, organic, non-GMO, and then fermentation, then it can be beneficial. It may not be something that we implement in the beginning when we're cutting out the dairy and the gluten to give our body that break, give the body a chance to have some repair, but then it can certainly be something that we can implement at some point, on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally not opposed to that.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that's a beautiful answer, Jen. And the reason I ask it is I've found in my journey and with clients that I've helped adding back in, right? So remember what I said before about the things that I removed. I intentionally remove all dairy at the start. It's because most dairy is just, in my opinion, horrible, toxic food for you. But
sure,
it's not all of the dairy products. I, for example, in my journey, I've incorporated, because you said goat dairy. I incorporate goat cheese in my diet, and I also incorporate organic cow kefir. And I've noticed from a gut perspective that has been really supportive for it. So,
yes.
We won't go too deeply into this, but I want to plant the seed for people out there that the diet conversation, which is, I'm so happy Jen said at the start that she doesn't use that word because I agree, it's nuanced, and you need to listen to your beautifully bio-individualized, unique system. And some of these things can be incorporated. As long as you're listening, as long as you're looking out for the bad symptoms, then you can take a step forward. Would you agree with that, Jen?
100%. Yes.
Yeah. I love it. All right, let's keep it flowing. I wanted to ask that because I did wanted to take advantage of it. I've been thinking about the dairy thing over the last couple of days. Let's switch back here now to, let's hit on one more physical topic, and then I want to come back to the trauma and the energetics of gut health, because I can't not be in that space, especially with you, Jen. Let's talk one more physical element of the gut, and you hit on it briefly before. It's the gut brain connection, right? And how a healthy gut is a healthy brain. and a healthy brain impacts the gut. So I'm wondering what comes up? What comes up, Jen, when I mention this gut-brain connection, and why do you think it's so important?
Oh my gosh. Well, this is a powerful conversation in itself. And again, a topic that so many are unaware of as far as, those that are, guided to us for support. And so I'll just begin here and then move into the vagus nerve. But what's important to understand is that our beautiful microbiota, like I said earlier, is our own wellness military, right? And when we look at how having a low or that dysbiotic state and how it impacts what I mentioned earlier about the neurotransmitters, because you and I know this, but in educating others, a very high percentage of those neurotransmitters are produced in the gut. So when we are ingesting things like processed foods and all those disruptors that we talked about earlier, this decreases the production of those. And so then we are looking at things like higher levels of anxiety and depression. We look at things like Alzheimer's and
sleep, Jen.
And sleep. But it's just really getting the message out there that when we have that imbalance, it does affect our mental state. It affects sleep, like you said, and of course the weight loss, which is another thing.
Yeah.
But when we talk in terms of the vagus nerve, which you and I know is that super highway that runs from the gut to the brain. And like you said, the brain affecting the gut and the gut affecting the brain through this nervous system, which also, by the way, directly influences our autonomic system, which regulates blood pressure and digestion and all of these things. So we have to have this conversation with clients and with everyone. And, we talk about the parasympathetic, that rest or digest state, that relaxed state. We talk about the sympathetic, that fight or flight, which then we get into, talking about vagal tone and how that lower vagus nerve, that dorsal, that goes directly into our gut. And so, it's just understanding that this plays such a key role in gut health.
It's all connected.
It's all connected, and you can't have one without the other. So it's definitely a conversation I have with every single client. And most of the time, to be quite honest, there's like this blank stare, like, I didn't know this. So I get excited talking about this.
And Jen, that's why I wanted to ask you the question, just for people listening. This is why, and you mentioned it briefly, Jen, but I want to hit it home here. If you're studying yourself and you're noticing that you are a very anxious person or you have troubles with depression. I had a powerful speaker on the podcast a few weeks ago, Dr. Phil, and we were talking about his work with supplementation and helping people heal the gut, but specifically through the lens of helping autism and helping ADHD and helping these seemingly, as you would look on the outside, disconnected areas from the gut, but it's not disconnected. As Jen is beautifully saying, whether it's through the vagus nerve, whether it's through the neurotransmitter creation, whether it's through hormonal balance, I really want people to take away from this piece that Jen is saying that the gut plays a big role in how you are mentally and emotionally showing up in the world. And if you're looking to bring some balance back to your mental terrain, it would behoove you to speak to someone like Jen and start honing in on, okay, how can I bring some balance back to the gut? Jen, did I summarize that succinctly? Does that resonate with you?
That was beautiful. And just to add to that, because I know you'll love this, but when we look at the vagus nerve and we look at going back and forth, between our sympathetic and parasympathetic, when we store these traumas over time in our organs, in our cells, in our energy, we don't give our body a chance to really be in that
Yes.
parasympathetic, because even if we go back to it, it's always on guard. So we're never truly in that place. So, we can talk, you've probably heard.
Let's talk about it now, Jen. This is a perfect segue. So you're speaking of the hypervigilant mode. You're speaking of you're in that fight or flight response due to the traumatic repression. Let's talk about this, Jen, because at the start of the chat, we started to go here, but I paused it. We went into the physical. So let's go back now into the trauma, into the past, into this repressed emotion, which is energy in motion. It needs to move. So just inherently, by holding on to that state, it puts you into that opposite end of the nervous system state, the constantly hypervigilant, looking out for trouble. So Jen, the question I'll throw you here, where do we start with this? I know we talked about the solar plexus, but that's not the only energy center in relation to the gut. I often connect the sacral center when we start talking about the trauma element of the gut. What are your thoughts around this? What comes up?
So what comes up for me is, when relaying this beautiful message to people is, they're already somewhat overwhelmed. So when you said, where do we start? So we start here in the understanding and understanding why. And then we move into the conversation of what do we do to begin to address, that vagal tone and that parasympathetic. And I refer, I've been really reading about the polyvagal theory and how, we have to address what is called the social engagement. And that is connecting with ourselves and with the environment and other people. So we start with ourselves through that self-biofeedback, like breath work and meditation and humming and singing. And there are certain exercises that you can do to really stimulate the vagus nerve, but also obviously to reduce that stress. So that is really, really key. And so that's something that I really address with clients is implementing those practices. And a lot of them don't do that. So it's like so new to them. And so again, those baby steps. So that inner self work. And then of course, talking about the inner child work and the trauma. But then we move into connecting with our environment. So getting out in nature, grounding with Mother Gaia, and really receiving those healing electrons and that energy, which is just, there's so many studies, Harrison, as you know, that it can reduce inflammation in the body. It can reduce high blood pressure and it's just so profound.
Well, let me speak to that, Jen. Let me speak to that nature element. So what you were just talking about then was bringing some balance to that nervous system state. And you also hit on like the inner child element, and with the trauma coming up, there needs to be whether it's with the inner child, whether it's with the breath work that you mentioned, the polyvagal, a big theme here that connects all of these together is a feeling of safety, security, and support. So we feel like we can let go of the things that we're holding on to. And that theme itself could connect to the actual gut in terms of you eliminating, right? So if you're having gut challenges, there's probably also a high chance that you're having elimination challenges too. But I want to bring this back to the idea of that there is both physical elements and emotional and energetic elements that deserve to be let go of and moved through. And what nature now does, not only does nature help from a physiological perspective of giving us that grounded state where we can connect to the pheromones, connect to the sights and the sounds and all of that, all those beautiful elements. What the earth is doing at an energetic level is that it's providing that external support, safety, and security so we can do the work that is needed to let go.
Yes.
Does that resonate, Jen?
Yes. Oh my gosh, beautifully. And then the third thing I would just mention is that human connection, healthy human connection. So, for so many of us, we have just been gifted the platform of Clubhouse and connected with beautiful souls from all over the world, which has been, I've just hear from so many people about how healing it's been for them. So yeah, it's that earthly connection. It's that human connection,
It's a
and
tribe.
it's that tribe, and it's just so powerful and so healing. Even in, like you said, you can feel health and happiness and joy even in the midst of struggle, and that's by implementing those things.
Yeah, it's beautiful. As you're listening to this in the podcast world, and maybe you have these gut challenges, these are the creative ways you can start branching out into doing more than just the supplementation, doing more than just cutting out the dairy, doing more than, focusing on being mindful of refined sugar. This is an and conversation, not an or conversation. This isn't a, don't worry about the food today and just go stand in nature. No, this is while you are being mindful of what you're consuming, go connect to a tribe, right? Go connect to Mother Earth. Go start moving through that beautiful inner child dynamic and moving through these traumatic experiences in your past. Jen, on this note here, I want to ask you, because I want to bring in the Reiki here and the energy healing. With the whole gut conversation we've been talking about, and we've shifted now into this energetic and emotional piece of it. Where do you think receiving energy healing from an external practitioner, whether it be through Reiki, whether it be, there are many other modalities out there, whether I, for example, do Reiki, and I also do guided chakra cleansing meditations. Where do you think that this fits in to the gut healing journey in your perspective?
Oh my gosh. I think that it's equally as essential, because we know that, this energy, this vibrational energy, can stimulate the body. It can stimulate the body's own ability to heal, to detox, and directly affect your gut. I mean, it improves physical and mental health, but it addresses that spiritual side. And those are things that are, I think, really missing with people. But I think that they're craving that. I think they're craving that. And so when they hear that it's not just nutrition, that we can address this energy, it's like a whole new world opening up for people. It's so beautiful to witness. But again, and other modalities as well. But it's really that supporting them in discovering their own abilities within to heal themselves. Yeah. And I think that so many have not gone there yet. And so when they can witness your story and you're having discovered that, and that they can do that as well. And so I think energy work really facilitates that. And, I always tell people, I'm not a healer. I am the conduit, it's just being that channel from source to you so that you can become aware and have awareness of that within yourself. And I think that is as powerful, if not more, than addressing gluten and dairy. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. It's taking things into outer space, Jen. So it reminds me of the famous Rumi quote that I'm sure you've heard is, at the end of the day, we're all walking each other home. Yeah. Right. And that walking each other home is what you just explained, is that at the best coach, the best practitioner, the best therapist, the best doctor that you have on your team is the one that's waiting to be heard inside of you. And sometimes what we need is a bit of external help in another, when they act as a mirror, so we can see that coach, see that healer that's been waiting inside of us the whole time. And energy work is just, one of the modalities that helps that dynamic. I give a quick little example here. Maybe you can relate to this, Jen. In the Reiki that I do for people, we talked about how anger can hold itself in that gut region. And if we're holding onto that energetic stress, it's causing the tight junctions of the leaky gut to be exacerbated. And one thing that Reiki can do, if you're listening to this and you're maybe new to Reiki, what Reiki can do is can create the space for us to let go, right? So when you tune into the loving Reiki energy, and the practitioner is honing it in on that solar plexus energy center, that might be all that is waiting to be needed to allow that anger that you've been holding onto for how long, who knows how long, to finally release and move through you. And It wouldn't surprise me if the next day you working with your integrative nutritionist, they said, wow, your gut suddenly just jumped up a couple of notches. I don't think it's a coincidence. Do you agree with that, Jen?
100%.
Yeah.
Because 99% of people that I am guided to, or guided to each other that we support, is holding all of that right there in that solar plexus. And they just have never been supported and guided into releasing that. And so beautifully spoken.
Yeah, it's all the things. Jen, I love you very much. And I have one more question for you. But before I get to that, you do, as we've been hearing, as the podcast listeners have been tuning in, they can feel that you do so much beautiful work in this world, whether it be through the nutrition, whether it be through the energy work. So I want to give you the opportunity now. What are you doing in the world that you want to share with all the beautiful listeners tuning in, so they can maybe connect to you for a bit of support, a bit of guidance, and maybe to ask you to help them walk themselves home?
Yeah. So I'm just honored to be here and support anyone who's ready and open to that support, in not just healing their gut, but really understanding the capacity of their own ability to heal. But again, like we talked about, making them aware of all of the elements that are essential. And so it's, again, gut health predominantly, but gut energy, but whole body energy, and whole body healing. So it's really the whole gamut. And that's what I'm here to support others in on their journey. And just, it's just that instant connection where we just share our story. And if that creates that resonance, then we go from there, so I'm here, I'm around.
Beautiful.
And I'm ready to support.
Beautiful, Jen. And what I'll do, telling this to you and telling this to people listening, if you do want to connect with Jen, what I'm going to do is put all of her resources, her website, her beautiful Instagram, that if you haven't checked out, she does some hilarious reels on Instagram where she expresses her love with the world. I would definitely go check it out. I'll put it in the show notes for all of you listeners to tune in. Jen, I have one more question for you as we finish up this show. And this is a question I ask every single person. The intention of the Cosmic Love Antenna is a reconnection with the powerful cosmic love that is inside of us, so we can then express that cosmic love with everything outside of us. So I'm wondering, how do you define that love word personally?
Oh my gosh.
Nice, easy one.
Yeah. I feel like love is the fabric of our being. It's that all knowing that everything is okay, and that undeniable trust in source. And I think what makes a practitioner so successful, for lack of better words, is that we come from love, we come from a place of love, because we have experienced triumph over our own challenges and traumas. And so, yeah. Let me just breathe through that.
No, I think that's beautiful. I think that was so succinct, and that beingness of love. This is why I wanted to end with this question with guest Jen, is there's only so many amount of times that I can explain this, but when I get to hear it from other beautiful people like you, it really cements at least my own understanding. And I hope it's doing the same for other people. So could not have said it better myself, my beautiful friend. I love you very much, Jen. Thank you
I
for
love you too.
Thank you for spending time with me today. Thank you for sharing your guidance and your wisdom. Beautiful souls out there in the podcast world, I hope you gained some extra insight today. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate some reviews and some feedback. You can go down onto Apple Reviews, leave what you gained from this, what you thought of Jen, what you thought of me and my aspects and my education here today. But remember, you are loved unconditionally, and I'm wishing you a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you're in the world. And we'll catch you next time on the Cosmic Love Antenna. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to follow Harrison on Instagram, Twitter, and Clubhouse at Harrison Ma. That's Harrison, Meagher.